Hey there. I forgot the camera angle right. Honestly, it doesn't fucking matter. So I'm gonna just start, really. I got the inspiration to do this. It really surprised me, to be honest. I mostly go on TikTok, which is Inspired Light. Because a lot of this content is kind of like, there's at a different phase of my spiritual awakening, I'd say. But I'll get to it, right? So what am I talking about? I will find out. I'm not so sure about the left to right sort of angle of this. It's just a bit. Anyway, well, among other things, I'm a channeler. Be patient with me while I receive. Spiritual awakening, it comes in many forms, right? So we think we know what it looks like. But do we really? Well, every spiritual awakening, returning to the light, that remembrance, it has its twists and turns, and it's always unique. It's like a snowflake, but one that's in the process of growing in a perfect, unique way, but also in a kind of fractal way, because every soul is a seed of the creator, and every lifetime, you might say, although, well, all life is ever fructating into new forms and new manifestations, emanating from the essence of its being, but also being. Because there's not really a distinction between being and a being, but there are still infinite beings, manifold beings, and yet there is only one. This vessel is, on the surface, going through a process known as sissification. And yet this vessel, its personality, is on a spiritual journey, and the two are meshed together in a beautiful way. Not that any awakening is any less beautiful than any other. Sexual desire has been oppressed. The vessel has a reluctance to use that word. Vessel of God, obviously, right? But you can think what you like. Oh, this vessel. Oh, okay, whatever. I don't know if I want to use that. Maybe. Fuck it. I'll just carry on. So basically, right. It's been treated as unworthy to freely express desire and lust and pleasure. And yet at the same time, there has been a darkness, you might say, surrounding the expression of that. And it's actually connected. They're not separate things. On one hand, it's been suppressed, repressed, oppressed in men and women. It's been treated as unworthy unless it comes in particular method, like say sex out of marriage, unworthy. Sex with the same sex, unworthy. And of course, it's varied from culture to culture, but there's been so much control around how we gain pleasure, get pleasure, access pleasure. It's not gaining it. How we access pleasure, how we connect to ourselves, how we pleasure ourselves, how we pleasure each other. And this has been very restrictive and painful for a lot of beings, especially when they've been restricting themselves due to socialized and energetic restrictions. It kind of connects to sort of network of nodes like the ley lines sort of thing, and how they were deliberately infected in such a particular way. Don't know why dark codes comes to mind. So codes that were not harmonious but were intentionally put into the ley lines and such. This was around the time when Atlantis fell. Not when it fell as a civilization per se, but when it fell from grace. Best not to get stuck in the details, nonetheless. Yes. It was part of the result of this, part of what happened, it was to fall into ego. Now, in a way, this wasn't really a problem in that the human collective chose this as part of an overall divine plan, an overall hero's journey. And so, it went south for a bit, and now this return back to the haven, the fold, the light. We're just facing that dragon one more time, and then we're free. Although technically we always were and always are free, but bear with these tangents, though they do have a purpose. As does ADHD in this world. I wonder if you can follow. Good luck. I'm sure you can. So this, like a emissions, like a radio signal, right? The minds were influenced, but then you might say there's also ancestral wisdom and trauma, right? Because there's both. Ancestral wisdom got corrupted? Well, in any case, it's an egoic thing, collectively and individually, right? And inevitably, through the actions, through the karma, it got passed on, right? And the other side of the coin, or the same phenomena energetically, has been that when it has been manifesting sex, there's been a distortion where, because it's been suppressed, it's sort of, there's bubbles rising to the surface from the repressed and oppressed subconscious divine feminine, wounded. There's a wounded masculine aspect sexually, which prana and sexuality and life force, that it's all kind of the same thing anyway. And also what's called by some dark feminine, which is all the feminine power that was rejected by the psyche in men and women, especially in women, but both really. It's just that women often embodied more of that energy naturally. And so anyway, details. What happened is this energy has, for thousands of years, approximately 20,000 years, it's been maybe a bit longer. It's been, when it has manifested, it's manifested in domination and submission. Now, BDSM is a symptom of this, a side effect. It's not a problem. In fact, it being prominent to the extent, that sort of thing being prominent to the extent that it is on Earth at the moment, is actually, it's rising and being seen to the light, right? And it's not even dark necessarily, but also there are dark things that are rising to be seen by the light and have been. For example, Epstein's Island. This is no way disparaging the BDSM community. I'm not connecting those two things. There is a connection, but it's not that it's bad. It's just the domination submission thing it does have a light aspect, and I'll get to that. There's an aspect in which it can be harmonious. It's a duality as part of that's harmonious and harmonious playing off, bouncing off each other. No pun intended, but also pun intended. I didn't intend it. God did. Don't blame me if God's being naughty. God has a sense of humor. He actually does. Like the divine is very cheerful, very comical, very amusing. Joyful bliss is actually, it's not serious and solemn, or it can be, but it's sparkly and fun and jolly, and it's not like it's childlike. It's more like children are godlike. Adults just take things too seriously because they're stuck in ego. So there's a lot of, let's say, kinks that are linked to shame and the belief in not being good enough. And you can really get a look at what's going on under the hood by looking at someone's sexual side, right? That's not judgmental. It's just simply a fact. But also by exploring it, it's a form of shadow work, a form of inner work, a form of healing by allowing the sexual expression of a being or oneself to emerge as it wants to, naturally, to be seen. As long as there's no harm involved, obviously. And even that which does involve harm on a collective level is being seen more and more by the light of conscious awareness collectively. And with the light that's being shone like a beacon from the central sun and beyond, from right from the top, even though there isn't really a top, right from the central heart. Oh, that's interesting. I am being surprised by what's coming out here because I am channeling. Who is I am? That's channeling. Okay. Serious, right? All serious. Okay. So it's funny that. Funny how I'm in a good mood, but I'm talking about dark things. But what is dark really? Because the healing on earth that's happening is actually something to celebrate. But it can be challenging. It can be painful, especially when one inevitably resists, because it's the very resistance that needs to heal, right? That's causing the blockages and the distortions and the channels going off one way or another because they can't have a straight, clear channel. Although, sorry, the divine was just reassuring me where I need to be, right? So, there's this distortion that has two sides to it, in a sense, like a coin with one part of the duality has been the excessive control of it. The other has been, when it has been manifesting in an unhealthy, unharmonious way that's destructive. It's destructive for those who are expected to be in submission, but not submission to God, but rather dominated, and not in a, oh, this is fun kind of way. And since life force, prana, and sexual energy is all one, it's in how we've been living our lives. It's not just in the bedroom, right? So this does involve things like a lack of consent in sex. It also involves a greater interest in no, I won't. That doesn't. The masculine in men and women, because both men and women have both masculine and feminine. Or you might say the active and the receptive. Well, the active has been precluding the receptive from balanced, harmonious influence. And so the active, the masculine elements, you might say fire and air, symbolically speaking, have been unbalanced. People have been acting from a place of constriction and unharmony, of pain, suffering, limiting self-beliefs, domination and control, domination of oneself, of one's own spirit, self-restriction, essentially self-harm, not just in the way you think of it, but energetic self-harm. The things we tell ourselves, our negative self-talk, and all of that. And in sexuality and sex, when there's this sense of, even if it's a game one's playing, of inferiority and superiority, of one having a higher position than the other, and one serving the other because they're in a lower position, it does play out because of this distortion. But interestingly enough, we're coming to a point now where it is possible to play out BDSM style stuff in a way that is actually aligned with unconditional love. And it's spicy and God loves it, like all things, obviously. But anyway, that's something I've been exploring, but not everyone's path is compatible with that, and that's fair enough. So the way we've been acting through life has been, well, there are rules to follow, there are constrictions and the beliefs about ourselves that we have and about the divine that we have that are limited and was constricting and derived in fear and other base elements. That's an interesting metaphor. Lead to gold, right? So lead, so dense, so heavy, so base. Anyway, in any case, there have been many lifetimes and much ancestral life lessons and karma and all that stuff passed down, ancestral trauma. Lots of wisdom has been accumulated through that experience, and this has been very painful. Time for the age of pain is over or coming to an end. It's an interesting way of looking at it. We have been acting, partly because it's all an act, it's all on the stage of life, of life, in the sense of Shakespeare. But we have been taking action not from inspiration, not from a place of presence, but from a place of self-hatred, from a place of fear, from a place of not being enough, from a place of constriction, from a place of forcing ourselves and each other, by the way, there's no difference really, to follow rules, to follow constriction, to be dominated and controlled by those higher up in the hierarchy. And there's no need for hierarchy, really. There is a sort of divine hierarchy, but it's actually entirely voluntary and is based on also on frequency as well. It's just sort of naturally, it's a natural thing. Anyway, but unnatural hierarchy that's enforced by those who dominate others, take energy from others, and then people are conditioned to dominate people beneath them while being dominated by those above them, and to focus on the sense of differentiation and separation between each other and roles that they have. And then basically, life is an act in the sense that the creator is like a film director and an actor and all the props and everything, and every soul is part of the creator and also a seed that is the creator. So the masculine energy of taking action. We have been taking action, and of course, the divine feminine and divine masculine is actually simultaneous, although there can be a gestation period before divine masculine or the active acts on the receptive. Simultaneously, we act in the now, and the feminine and the masculine are both active in the now. So when someone is in the flow state, otherwise known as the Tao, or acting on your intuition, acting from your heart, what happens is someone is in harmony with divine feminine and divine masculine, where they are listening to the nudges from the universe, from their soul, from deep within, from the higher self, from the inner self, what have you. It's all one, really. They're listening and receiving and acting present. That presence, that receptiveness, that stillness, that says no, figuratively, to that which is not harmonious, for it melts it, and it sees because it is still. It is strength. It is so much more. It is real strength. It is a divine feminine in its power. The divine feminine in its power. And we all possess that. We all are that. It's part of what makes us, whether we were masculine or feminine, because, we've all had, a soul doesn't really have a gender, right? That, or sex, that is something an incarnated being will have. But so much more than that, and yet we're nothing in particular, for we are just being. Being nothing in particular means you are everything, whereas being anything in particular, being anything in particular means you are just that. And yet it's a lie. The illusion of particularness, which is separateness from other things, the categorization, the compartmentalization of being, pardon me, someone doesn't know that. I'm recording. Lovely. Right. So the harmony, the grace. Grace is when you're connected to earth and heaven, and your presence, and you're allowing yourself to be guided in the moment by nudges and prompts, and just you're allowing yourself to be like a pendulum swaying in the wind or something like that, or like a ship that allows itself to be open to receive divine direction. Of course, it is the very being it's being guided by, and that it is surrendering to. We are, when we surrender to God, simultaneously completely letting God be in control, but also we are the God that's in control, because the being is the divine. That being, what do you think the observer that sees everything behind the eyes, you all the time, when you're awake or when you're asleep, you see, right? The being that sees is not in any way differentiated from God, right? I just putting it out there. When it's in harmony and grace, well, all is well, right? But what's been happening is that light has been distorted. And now it's coming back to harmony, but you need to see the distortions to heal them. You need to see your own kinks in the knots and the messiness and the pain and the clogs, and you clear the system out. You see it with crystalline light, apparently. You see it and you heal it. Seeing is healing. It's the real knowing. The knowing isn't like thinking it through. I know this and I've memorized that. That's arrogance. Well, that's an oversimplification, but it's arrogance and it's pride, and it's because who is the one that knows that? Not the separate person that supposedly exists. Not that we should try to stamp away our personalities and try to forcibly destruct our egos. Interestingly enough, personality exists naturally. It's just that the personality can be surrendered and in harmony with and in grace with the universe, not fighting it. And there's an understanding, an understanding, a knowing, a seeing of. It's like there's this vast infinite ocean, and it's like instead of all being all, I don't know, encrusted with sort of trying to hold up walls against the rest of reality, there's a melting and a blurring of the boundaries. Oh, how lovely to see you. I remember you fondly, honestly. Anyway, life does have its twists and turns, doesn't it? I feel like that made my day. Well, it was already a good day, actually. Anyway, so oh, I've already received a miracle today, I have to say. 1818. So if you're not aware, my TikTok is Inspired Light. I haven't been on here for ages because they do. Yes, they do. Miracles do happen every day. We just need to be aware to see it. Yes, you've shifted. I know you have. So where was I? Pardon me. I will engage with you, but at the same time, I'm going to bring something through. We allow ourselves to connect with ourselves when we are still. There is no particular way in which it must be done. And yet, people think of meditation and they recoil in the fear because I'm exaggerating a bit, but because they say, oh, I can't meditate because there's all these thoughts going on and it's like really hard. And that's not failed meditation. That's successful meditation because you're aware of all the thoughts and you can see it. And when you drift off down a rabbit hole, you just come back and watch it more. It does help to focus on something in particular. This one focuses on the physical sensations in their body, but also another approach is to focus on watching something. It can be, for example, you can watch a guided meditation. Nick watches, well, hypnosis videos of a particular type. So, yeah. Oh, I'm slightly scared to talk about this, to be honest, but I think it's time. So, there have been imbalances in the way sexuality has played out because of the way sexuality has been suppressed and repressed, and also the life force of us. We've been forced into boxes, right? It's been done by religion. It's been done by culture. We've been doing it to each other. It's grim. It's pretty shit, really. And part of the healing actually comes in an allowing of all those kinks that have merged to be there and to unfold, as long as no one's being hurt. So Nick has been very, honestly, has been kinky for a long time, and kind of kept it under wraps, suppressed it. Turns out, identity is something you can play with, but without identifying with it. So I'm a sissy, right? It's like a femboy, but a slut. Now, I mean, I could like shave every day and all that, so but I can't be bothered because I'm also lazy, and like I don't force myself. I make sure not to force myself to take action with pushing, because I like to relax more. And the more I relax, the more Nick relaxes, the more there's a receiving and an openness for the nudges to be received. And then you can act in flow and in grace because you're allowing yourself to. We don't typically think of spirituality, partly because of organized religion, as something that involves kinky sex, right? And there's no reason why it can't. And there's no reason why meditation can't be involved sexual stuff as well. It doesn't have to, but you can pay attention to anything. Where am I going with this? I need to make sure. I am sorry, by the way. I knew you ought to. My ego gets a bit excited with ADHD kind of things, so I need to take a step back sometimes. And I'm not used to doing lives. Organized religion, and even spirituality, spiritual gurus, they make it so darn complicated. And then when it's hard to follow all the practices and all the rules, you get frustrated and you think there's something wrong with you. And that is not true. Like, whatever brings you peace, you know what it is. It could be time spent with a pet. Tab. You've got a lovely dog, haven't you? It could be time. It's just having a walk. Some people, they love mantras and chanting, and there's all kinds of approaches to trying meditation, mindfulness, and stuff. And it's worth trying things out, and it's experimenting and seeing what sticks and what works, and being willing to not to change how you do it, change it up as well if it's getting a bit stale. It's not a thing that we need to do to complete to like fulfill objectives. Like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. That way I'll make progress, because basically the belief that we're not enough, and we're trying to almost kind of people please God to sort of perform well, to sort of, it's an efforting, a trying. That's an unbalanced masculine approach to spirituality. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of the result of how we've been conditioned energetically and mentally, and all the dense energy in our pain bodies. So, I've been reminded just to be grateful of a certain miracle that has come to me today. That's true. Yeah, it's true. We can't force it, and we think spirituality is like winning points and getting it right, and then we're like, oh no, I failed. What about this? What about that? And it's just like, it's just unfolding. It's like a flower slowly blooming. It doesn't happen like that. Like, we're not in control. Like, who even are we? Like, we're not like some separate being that controls the whole thing. Oh, hello. Authentically, it's being kind to yourself, and it's just like being willing to like bear yourself to yourself and others, and just be like, you know what, this is how I am right now, you know, and that's okay. And not being afraid to show that, or even if you are afraid, being brave and saying, hey, I'm like this, and yes, right. And I've got all that negative self-talk still sometimes, you know. We get in our heads about it, and we're like, oh my God, what's going on? How do I perform well? How do I do this? How do I do that? And it's just like, oh God, we put ourselves through hell. Hell is just in our heads. But when we clear our head, that's where heaven is, right? It's not like some big destination over there. We could climb this huge mountain and eventually we'd be worthy enough for God's grace. No, it's all right here. Yeah. I know you've been shifting, and I think that it's hard not to. um, the impurities are being burnt away, and on the world stage, this is happening too, including certain world leaders, corrupt gurus, and so forth that aren't really what they purport to be. That will be seen. That is being seen, and you know, the tower is falling down, right? I mean, it's like a global collective tower moment sort of thing. That's what I'm getting. Maybe I'm taking this whole thing a little bit too seriously. Hello. Thanks for coming. This is a surprise. I just thought, okay, I got this inspiration to do this video. At first, it's going to be like a new trailer because my views and my perspective on spirituality has changed quite a bit since I started this podcast, right? And it meant a lot to me when I created it, but I've barely been touching it, right? I've been on my TikTok instead, Inspired Light, but I've been shifting a lot. So I look at some of the old things I used to say, and I was just like, well, you know, I'm sure it's perfect for some people out there to come across that and they love it, and there's nothing wrong with it. But you evolve when you watch different stuff, and I'm not the same person I was before. I'm just so happy. You were such a dear friend, Tab, and you know, it's sad that we weren't talking for so long. I mean, these things happen. You know, everything's meant to happen the way it happens, right? Nothing's really wrong. I'm sure it's all perfect. It all perfectly played out. Everything plays out the way it needs to, right? I'm grateful for the friendship we had. I'm grateful for this surprise. Oh my God! Oh, it's so good. It really is. Yeah, it really is. And hmm. Well, this image of a rose blooming. So there's birds chirping. There's trees swaying in the wind. And we're so focused on work and serious things and politics and shit. But like, we miss it. Like, isn't it just remarkable just what a leaf looks like? Or even like household objects. Like, the form around us is remarkable and we miss it. We think it's just taken for granted. We have a lot to be grateful for. I'm sure since you've started your spiritual journey, you have come a long way, you know. Technically nowhere at all, but you've also come a long way. You see things a lot clearer now. And there's still hardships, you know, that you're faced with. Stuff that comes to the surface, but you just keep acing it. And even when you don't, you know, you make the progress that you're ready to make, you know, when you're ready to make it in divine timing. And we are so harsh to ourselves. But I want you to know, whoever is listening, that you're doing a great job at like living. It's kind of funny to say, because what is a great job? What is a bad job? Like, we do great anyway. And yet we still do with choice. I've been exploring myself the meaning of free will and choice, and like, I've just had to surrender to the fact that I have no fucking clue. Our mind can't really grasp it. It just is isness happening. And there's no separation between an individual and the whole. But the individual is still somehow there as a manifestation of the whole. At a certain point, we'll realize, maybe we already do, that it's all a joke, really. Like, it's all a game, it's all a play. I never really lost. We don't need to hold ourselves to strict standards of how to be spiritual, you know, or how to live life properly, because we feel like we've got to keep spiritual, but we also need to keep up a facade to ourselves that we are spiritual because of X, Y, and Z. We're not even the ones doing this, although there's not like a person who does well completing objectives or fails. It's not like there's no stakes. It's just happening, right? Life just happens. Life just happens to be there, and everything is life. So the only thing that can happen is happening. The phenomenon of happening, of being, it just happens, right? Imagine a being that's so remarkable that it always surprises itself in a most brilliant, remarkable way. The only possible being that can exist must be like this, because there's no virtue, there's no positive trait which cannot be possessed by God, by being. No, like, positive attribute. So, like freedom, for example. We worry about free will. Oh, do I have free will? Well, we are freedom. We are light. We are love. We are grace. We are wisdom. The Creator created illusory falsity, in a sense, to know itself better. And there's truth in a way to lies, because the duality was formed from the egg of the whole and the truth. And the potential was there the whole time. So in a way, it's true as well. It's like there's true and there's true, though, right? Because true is love, light, and grace and all that. So there's nothing wrong with the dark. There's nothing wrong with suffering and pain. It's the rejection of that keeps it there. So I kind of feel called to bring this to an end now. And thank you, God. Thank you, Tab. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you anyone who watches at a later date. I'm really glad that things are really coming together. I don't think it's just for me either. Like, I think this is a global thing. It might be a bit messy at times and right now, but things are really coming together. The light has really taken hold. And we will see the light more and more, but we also see the darkness in the bright light more and more and more. The darkness that was previously hidden in the shadows will be seen. There's a lot to be optimistic about, and we don't need to take it all so seriously. We can just like focus on day to day chilling, essentially, not pushing ourselves too hard, taking it slow, taking it easy, listening and receiving, and allowing ourselves to be open enough to hear. I'm feeling this joyful sort of warmth glowing inside me. I'm so glad. I might do more of these. I might never do it again. I'm going to do more of these, I think, but I don't know when. It will happen when it happens. That's just the way it goes. All right, then, whoever you are, and I mean whoever you are and whatever you have done, I truly wish you the best. No judgment. Have a lovely life, I guess. Right, bye. Not yet.